We are officially halfway through the 2025 NHL season, and it has turned into absolute chaos. Teams that were supposed to be contending for a Stanley Cup this season are struggling to stay above 500, while the so-called worst playoff team of all time is amongst the league's best right now. We have unbreakable records on the verge of being broken, and some that have already been broken. The best rookies in the league are turning into superstars right in front of our eyes, and people still don't care. Practically every team in the Eastern Conference can still make the playoffs, while in the West, things seem to be already set in stone. Tensions are getting high, coaches are getting fired, players are going after each other, and even teammates are going after each other. The Vancouver Canucks are dealing with some serious drama right now between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. If you've been watching, it's pretty obvious that these two don't exactly get along. There's been tension on the ice, miscommunication during games, and just an overall sense that they're not on the same page. Fans and media have been picking up on it, and it's starting to feel like something the team can't ignore anymore. Miller and Pettersson are huge pieces of the Canucks, but they're very different players. Miller is the gritty vocal leader who plays with a lot of edge, while Pettersson is younger, flashy, and focused on pure skill and scoring. When they're clicking, it's great, but lately it's been more of an oil and water situation than anything else, and it's affecting the team in a pretty bad way. Last year, the Canucks were dominant, winning the Pacific Division and then taking the Oilers to Game 7 of the second round. But this year, they've been less than impressive. Adding together their losses and loser points, this is a below 500 team, and they've been looking to shake things up. In fact, JT Miller was almost dealt this past week. The Canucks and Rangers were close to a deal with JT Miller, but it fell apart at the last second. It wasn't exactly made known on why the deal didn't go through, maybe money stuff or the Canucks didn't like the trade package, but it's clear that the Vancouver Canucks are looking to trade either Miller or Pettersson, and honestly, sending Miller back to the Rangers would benefit both teams, as New York is struggling as well. They started the year as one of the best teams in the entire league, going 12-4-1 in their first 17 games, but then something happened. They started spiraling. Between November 20th and January 7th, they went 6-16-1 with a -31 goal differential, both of which were worst in the league at that time. During this stretch, the Rangers fumbled to 7th place in the division and 14th in the Eastern Conference. Along the way, they traded their captain Jacob Trouba and a former number 2 overall pick in Kaapo Kakko, and they healthy scratched one of the franchise's greatest goal scorers in Chris Kreider. Trust in the organization was at an all-time low. When you look at the expected goals, things looked even uglier. The Rangers were allowing 3.53 expected goals per 60 minutes, and in that time between November 20th and January 7th, the number jumped to 3.7 expected goals per 60 minutes, the worst in the entire NHL. The defense was a mess, except for maybe Adam Fox. With him on the ice, the Rangers had a 57.8% expected goals share and a +9 goal differential. But without him, it dropped to a 43.5% and a -13. Ryan Lindgren and K'Andre Miller barely stayed above 50% expected goal share, with the goal differentials of -5 and -6. Braden Schneider showed offensive flashes, but his defensive lapses canceled them out. Even the forwards were crashing. Mika Zibanejad struggled, with the team allowing 3.25 expected goals per 60 minutes when he was on the ice, ranking him 601st out of 610 players. The entire franchise did an entire 180 from where they were 7 months ago. Luckily for them though, they've been somehow playing better in 2025. In the new year, they've been actually one of the best teams in the league, which can hopefully help them recover from their abysmal start to the season. But one team that probably won't recover is the Nashville Predators, because I don't think anyone would have pegged them as a lottery team at the end of last season. Despite the first round exit, they were still 11th in the entire NHL during the regular season and had a top 10 offense, scoring 266 goals. But then you have to add in the fact that they completely transformed their roster over the summer. In free agency, the Predators went out and got 3 of the biggest names available: Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea, 2 elite forwards and a stud defenseman. But the start of the season wasn't as expected. By November 8th, there was no team in the NHL that was worse than the Nashville Predators, and their new additions were not performing at all. Stamkos had just 4 goals in 14 games, Marchessault only had 7 points, and Brady Shea had 6 points and was a -7. And since then, things have not gotten any better. Stamkos is on pace for his worst goal-scoring season since his rookie season. Saros has just 11 wins in 35 starts, and the team is bottom 5 in the entire league. Now, surprisingly, head coach Andrew Burnett still has his job, because with the way things have been going in the NHL, you would have thought that he had been fired in the first month of the season, sort of what like the Bruins did. The Bruins let go of coach Jim Montgomery after a tough 8-9-3 start to the season, leaving them out of the playoff contention, and associate coach Joe Sacco stepped in as the interim head coach. Montgomery, who had a great record of 120, 41, and 23 with the Bruins, just couldn't get past the Panthers in the playoffs in the last 2 seasons. The team's issues this year, especially with offense and defense, led to the change of coaching, where they've gotten a bit better but are still hovering around 500, struggling to maintain a playoff spot. The Blues jumped on the opportunity and grabbed Montgomery, hiring him as their new head coach after firing Drew Bannister. Now they're only 3 points out of the playoffs, but with how locked the West looks, it'll be hard for them to break in. The coaching changes for the Bruins and Blues haven't really shaken things up that much, but the Red Wings are on a roll under Todd McClellan, who they brought in late December. Since he took over, they've been one of the best teams in the entire league, scoring 3.82 goals per game and running a 45% power play, both of which lead the league during that stretch. After coming so close to making the playoffs last season and missing out in a heartbreaking fashion, they're now in a solid spot to finally make it. The Yzer plan was starting to look like another failed season, but with McClellan, the Wings are thriving. But not every team has had the same luck with a coaching change. I guess it's a bit easier to understand when it's the Blackhawks though. They've been rebuilding for a while now, especially after their championship years, so they're still trying to figure things out. The coach getting fired shows that they're trying to make some moves, but with such a young team, it'll take some time before they're actually in the mix. Connor Bedard wasn't really living up to the hype under the old coach, but since the change, he's been killing it. 22 points in 20 games. That is a massive turnaround for him, helping his confidence. As for the team's record, it's not something to lose sleep over. The Blackhawks are in full rebuild mode, but with Bedard stepping up, there's definitely reason to be excited about the future, especially when they're pretty much a lock for a top 5 pick in this year's NHL draft, being the worst team in the entire league. But in terms of point percentage, the Sharks are even worse than the Blackhawks. They have a 14-28-6 record, which is just horrendous, but they're surprisingly a fun team to watch. San Jose is in the midst of an entire youth movement, with a bulk of their offense being led by Will Eklund, Will Smith, and Macklin Celebrini, who is playing absolutely lights out. Even though he missed some time at the start of the season with an injury, Celebrini is scoring at a .89 points per game, which is good for a 73 points over 82 games. Not only is he putting up points at an insane rate, but he's also showing that he can dominate games. He's amongst the top defensive forwards in the game already and has proven that he can drive his own line offensively. He has been one of the most impressive rookies this season, but the Calder isn't exactly a lock. Matvei Michkov has been electric for Philly. There's really no other word to describe him. He did go on a cold streak for a little while, but he has the ability to turn that right around. At the start of the season, Michkov faced a bit of a surprise when Tortorella made him a healthy scratch for a couple of games. For a rookie who'd already been playing pretty well and putting up points, it was a bit of a shock. Tortorella's known for his tough love approach, and this was his way of reminding Michkov that it's not just about flashy plays, it's about being a complete team-first player. A lot of people were worried it might mess with Michkov's confidence, but instead he came back even stronger. After being scratched, he put up 17 points in 16 games and looked even sharper in his all-around game. He's now up to 33 points and 14 goals through his first 45 NHL games, and is a pretty big part of the Flyers' offense and power play, where he's found almost half of his goals. But a rookie who, in my opinion, has been even better than these two is Lane Hutson. Hutson quickly became the Habs' #1 defenseman this year, but in the last month or so, he's been playing like one of the best defensemen in the entire league. The rookie defenseman has been a huge boost to the team's offense and is absolutely dominating offensive shifts, yet still people have their doubts. He's too small, or he can't play defense, which are some of the exact same things that Quinn Hughes was being told like 4 years ago. Now look at him. Hudson has the same potential where he could be one of the best offensive defensemen in the game, especially with the way Montreal's been playing. Since December 18th, Montreal is 11-3-1, with Lane leading the team, scoring with 16 points in those 15 games. But not only is Hudson clicking, almost the entire team is clicking. Both Caulfield and Suzuki are on pace for career years, with Caulfield even being near the top of the league in goal scoring. For being known as the best 40 goal scorer to never score 30, he may actually hit 40 this season. In net, Jacob Dobesh has stolen the show. In his first 5 starts, he's 5-0, with 4 of those wins being on the road. All of this great play from the team has shot the Habs into playoff position, but this Eastern playoff race will not be easy. Almost every single team in the Eastern Conference, except maybe the Islanders, Penguins, and Sabres, have a real shot at making the playoffs. The difference between the 7th team in the East and the 13th team in the East is just 6 points, with the Senators leading the charge. It's been years of saying the Senators can make the playoffs, but this year really seems like they can do it. Acquiring Ullmark is paying off, and their forward core is finally playing like everyone knows they can. Them and the Red Wings have sort of broken out of that triangle of mid, leaving Buffalo behind. The The Rangers have had a resurgence lately, pushing them back into the mix, while Boston and Philly are hanging on. But the absolute best story in the NHL is the fact that the Columbus Blue Jackets are staying competitive this season. After the tragedy in the summer, it seems like they're banding together and almost everyone on their roster is overperforming. Marchenko is looking like a superstar forward, Monahan is playing like he was in his Calgary days, Voronkov is turning into a proven goal scorer, and Zach Werenski is somehow producing at over a point per game pace. If they can figure out their goaltending, they might just sneak their way into the postseason. Out west, things aren't nearly as wild. Honestly, 7 of the 8 playoff spots feel pretty much locked up. It's just a matter of where everyone lands. In the Central, you've got Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, and Winnipeg all looking safe. Winnipeg's probably going to take that division, but the other 3 could shuffle around anywhere. Over in the Pacific, Vegas, Edmonton, and LA are the clear top dogs. It's down to either Edmonton or Vegas for the division title, with LA likely settling at 3rd. The real race is for the 2nd wildcard spot. Right now, the Flames have it, but the Canucks and Blues are breathing down their necks, so it's anyone's game. As of now, the leaders in the West are Winnipeg, Vegas, and Edmonton, who actually might end up winning the conference. Since December 1st, the Oilers have been the best team in the entire NHL, winning 16 of their 22 games, and that's mainly because Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are playing like their normal selves. After a slow start, they're back to being some of the best players in the entire league. I would say that Leon and Connor and the Oilers have a good chance at winning the President's Trophy, but they may have a hard time beating out the surprise Washington Capitals. The Caps were the so-called worst playoff team in NHL history last season after making the playoffs with a -37 goal differential and then being swept by the Rangers. But this season, the tables have completely turned. They are currently the best team in the entire NHL, are 2nd in both goals for and goals against, and have the 3rd best penalty kill. They're being led by a bunch of players having breakout seasons. Alexei Protas is playing great. PLD is proving that he can be an effective player. Connor McMichael is breaking out. Chychrun is on pace for a career high. And Alexander Ovechkin is playing some of the best hockey of his entire NHL career. He's scoring at a rate of 0.7 goals per game, a rate that he's only hit 3 times in his career, 2020, 2009, and 2008. And it's gotta be because he's chasing down the Great One's unbreakable all-time goal record. He's on pace to break that this season, even after missing 16 games. The 2025 NHL season has been nothing short of a roller coaster. Halfway through, and it's chaos everywhere you look. Unexpected struggles, breakout stars, record chases, and playoff races that are as unpredictable as ever. If the first half was this wild, the second half might just blow the roof off.